Yes, you're right. It's not just you. Diminished 7 chords are hard to understand, but that's only because you don't understand them yet. Don't worry, I'm going to lay it all out for you plainly and simply, as always. This lesson is the first lesson in a series on diminished 7 chords. Today we're going to learn what the chord is, what the chord is not, where it comes from, closely related chords, and hopefully clear up some of the inherently confusing terms and concepts that go along with these chords. Typically, when someone says a diminished chord, they mean a diminished 7 chord. However, the diminished triad is a chord on its own as well. And so I want to start with that. I want to look at what the diminished triad is. A triad is, of course, a 3-note chord, and so I'm going to compare this to a C major chord. A C major chord is the first, third, and fifth notes of the C major scale. That's going to be C, E, and G. A diminished triad is going to flat the third and the fifth. So we're going to think of that as being a 1, flat 3, and a flat 5. So C is still C. We've got the C there, that's our 1. The E becomes an E flat, and in this case the G becomes a G flat. And so we have this lovely, very dark sounding triad in the 1, flat 3, and flat 5. That's the diminished triad. The chord symbol for the diminished triad, when you're reading from a book or if you want to write down the chords to communicate to somebody else, might look like this. So you have the C diminished triad, using the small 0 for the meaning diminished. It's the diminished symbol. Or it might just say dim for diminished, looking like this. A common extension of the diminished triad is the half-diminished 7 chord, more commonly known as the minor 7 flat 5. And sometimes in music, what you see is what you get. And in this case, that's true. So here we have 1, 3, 5, and 7 in C major. So let's think about minor 7 flat 5. Let's make this a minor, dropping the third, 1, flat 3, and 5. And let's make it a minor 7, dropping the 7, 1, flat 3, 5, and flat 7. Minor 7 chord. Now, minor 7 flat 5 is actually just what it sounds like. We're going to flat that fifth, the G, so 1, flat 3, flat 5, and flat 7. That is the minor 7 flat 5 chord, also known as the half-diminished 7 chord. Like I always like to say, we have many, many terms to describe one thing in music, which makes it so much less confusing, I think. Right? In notation, you might see the minor 7 flat 5 notated this way, using the M7 for minor 7 and the B or the small b or the flat symbol in front of the 5. So again, minor 7 flat 5. You could also use the 0 that we used for the diminished triad, and you put a line through it, add the 7, that gives you a half-diminished 7 chord. And again, they're both the same thing. The minor 7 flat 5 chord, or the half-diminished 7 chord, only fits into a major key built off of the 7th note. So it's our 7 chord in a major key, or it is the 2 chord in a minor key. That's the only place that it fits diatonically, meaning that's the only time that it actually fits into a key, built off the 7th note of major or the 2nd note of minor. Okay, here we go. The full diminished 7 chord. And by the way, we sometimes call it the full diminished 7 chord to distinguish it from the half diminished 7 chord. So C diminished 7, C full diminished 7, lots of terms meaning one thing. Those are all the same thing. And the secret code, the way we build that chord is we're going to take the 1, then the flat 3, then the flat 5, and we're going to take that flat 7 and we're going to flat it again. Now this is where a lot of people kind of fall off the map and they're like, yeah, no, music theory is dumb. I can't argue with you sometimes. I mean, it does seem to have a language of its own, and it doesn't always make sense to those of us who speak regular languages, like, not the musical theory language. The double flatted 7 is, yes, the same as the 6. Let's take a look at that. If I have 1, 3, 5, and 7 in C, I flat the third. I've got the E flat now. I flat the 5. I've got the flat 5 now. So I've got 1, flat 3, and flat 5. This B, flatted one time, becomes a B flat. Flatted twice becomes, we would actually call that a B double flat. That's how committed we are to this strange language that was passed down to us basically for the last, 400 or 500 years. Yes, this note is an A. We can call it an A. But in this chord, we're going to think of it as a B double flat. We're not thinking of it as a 6. This is 6 in C. We're not thinking of this as a 1, a flat 3, a flat 5, and then we have this big jump to our 6th note. We're thinking of that as a 7. Let's think about where that came from. C major 7 becomes C minor 7, becomes C minor 7 flat 5, or C half diminished 7. Well, if you want to make this a little bit darker, it's pretty dark already, but if you want to darken that up just a little bit more, create more tension in our chord, in our piece, in our music, we flat that again. And so the way we're using the 7, it kind of sounds like a 7. It has that 7 chord kind of flair going on with it. So we call it a double flatted 7. Look, these are not my rules. I know they seem like they make no sense, but that's what we call it. And when someone says a double flatted 7, that's what they mean. Doesn't really matter why. I mean, I explained why, but if you're not buying it, that's just our tradition in Western music. That's what we call that chord. That's how that chord is built. 1, flat 3, flat 5, double flatted 7. That is your diminished 7 chord. And you have to raise your eyebrows when you play it. You have to go. It's worth noting here that the full diminished 7 chord, the 1, flat 3, flat 5, double flatted 7, does not fit into any key. Even if you call it an A, I've got a C and an E flat and a G flat and an A. There is no diatonic major or minor key, meaning just straight of the major scale or of the minor scale. There is no major or minor scale or key that this chord fits into, which means that all diminished 7 chords are non-diatonic, for whatever that's worth. They don't fit into a key. So they're always going to add that little extra edge, because at least one of those notes, possibly more, but at least one of those notes is going to be going out of key. That takes care of the first lesson on diminished 7 chords. Hopefully that clears up some of the confusion you may have been having surrounding these very strangely built chords. In the next lesson, we're going to look more deeply into the structure of the diminished 7 chord, as well as its shape on the guitar, to see how it is uniquely versatile in Western harmonies. There truly is no other chord like the diminished 7 chord. As soon as that lesson is published, it'll be right there for you. So make sure and click on it and check it out.